Welcome back, Geometry. In this video, we'll be going over this example talking about congruent triangles and writing congruency statements. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's say triangle WVU is congruent to triangle GHI. That's what that statement is saying. And they want us to write all possible congruency statements and mark the diagram accordingly. So let's go ahead and do that first part. So we're going to write all possible congruency statements. I like to start with my angles. Or actually, we can write our congruency statements and mark the diagram as we go as well. So let's start with our angles. So since W is the first letter in this triangle statement and G is the first letter in that triangle statement, that means that angle W is congruent to angle G. So I'm going to mark that in my picture with one arc. So angle W is congruent to angle G. And then in the next one, since V is the second letter in that triangle statement, and H is the second letter in that triangle statement, then angle V is congruent to angle H. And I'm going to mark that with two arcs. So these two angles are congruent. And then since U is the last letter and I is the last letter, we know and we can say that angle U is congruent to angle I. So I'm going to mark that with an arc with a tick going through it. Okay, so now we know which pairs of angles are congruent, and the three angles in one triangle are marked differently to show that they have different angle measures. Okay, let's move on to our congruency statement. So I'm going to switch colors here. So let's start off with saying WV are the first two letters in that triangle statement, and GH are the first two letters in that triangle statement. So we can say WV is congruent to GH. So WV is congruent to GH. That's one tick mark. Okay. And then we can see the last two letters. So VU and HI, those two segments are congruent. So VU is congruent to HI. That's another statement. And I'm going to go ahead and mark that on my picture. So VU gets two tick marks and so does HI. And then the last statement is that WU and GI are congruent. So WU is congruent to GI. And I'm going to mark that with three tick marks. Okay, so now I've written the congruency statements and I've marked the diagram accordingly. Okay, so now let's take a look at this checkpoint. So in example one, let's say the measure of angle W is 73 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that in my picture. Angle W is 73 degrees. And I'm going to take a pause here because if angle W measures 73 degrees, then that means angle G is also 73 degrees. Because those two angles are congruent. We can see that in the diagram, and we can see that in this congruency statement that we wrote right here. And that 3 looks a little weird, so I'm going to fix it. Okay, and then let's take a look at the next thing that they tell us, which is angle I measures 29 degrees. So angle I, this is 29 degrees. So wait, if angle I is 29 degrees, then that means the other angle that has the same marking as angle I is also 29 degrees. So angle I is the angle that has the arc and the tick mark through it, and that matches angle U. So angle U has the same marking, so that means that angle U is also 29 degrees. And if we don't get that from our diagram, we can get that from our congruency statement right here. Okay. And then the last part is that they want us to determine all 6 angle measurements in both triangles. Well, we've already got 4 angle measurements. We just need to find the measure of angle V and angle H. Since those two angles are congruent, I just need to find one. So I'm going to focus in on triangle WVU. So I know that all the angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So angle W plus angle U plus angle V, when I add all of those angles together, I get 180 degrees. Well, I know 2 of those measurements. Angle W is 73 degrees. Angle U is 29 degrees. What I need to find is angle V, so the measure of angle V. So I've got an equation set up. I can go ahead and solve it. 73 plus 29, those things can be combined, and when I do that, I get 102. So I get 102 plus the measure of angle V equals 180. So to solve for that, all I have to do is subtract 102 from both sides. And when I do that, I get that the measure of angle V equals 78 degrees. So measure of angle V, this is 78 degrees. And since V and H are congruent, then that means H also measures 78 degrees. Okay, thanks for watching.